Welcome everyone to the Arreoblue Podcast. Really lucky today to be joined by Dael Williamson, Field CTO from Databricks. And also, Dael, you've spent a huge amount of time in the industry as well around data, talking to many customers about cutting edge through the years, as well as in the consultancy side as well. It's a real privilege to have you on the show. I don't know whether you just want to give a little bit more of an introduction to yourself.
Yeah, sure. So really thanks to you for being here. It's super cool to very nice setup that you have. Definitely better than I'm in my room and trying to put things on books. I as said, I'm the EMEA CTO at Databricks. I have a really cool job because I get to kind of meet our biggest customers. I get a lot of it's almost like therapy, like a lot of the problems that they're encountering, a lot of questions about what's going on in AI. I mean, we were just talking about DeepSeek just before we came in, so these things come up all the time. I'm a biochemist by sort of deep background. Lots of people ask me how that brought me to this. So the story is very simple, like, you're using a lot of data, you're using high volumes, you're doing a lot of AI work to figure out, drug discovery and industrial waste bioremediation. I just now do it in a more generalized setting. But it still means that I work with a lot of healthcare customers and things like that. Really cool to be here.
Brilliant. Well, look, we've got a couple of topics that we're going to cover. So we're going to talk a little bit about boutique and specialist consultancies and get your view on that. Then sort of having a conversation at the right level. So I know we've talked in the past around, data can do so many things within an organization. So how do you talk to the right people about the right sort of topics that they're interested in? Obviously, Databricks, like as a rocket ship and as the technology, right, how quickly it expands, talking about how you kind of keep up to date on that. And you just mentioned about the DeepSeek and all of these kind of topics that are so prevalent. And then finally, we work a lot in retail. I think retail as well is seeing this a lot at the moment, but we get asked it. How to structure my organization, how to structure my data team so it can be effective within an enterprise. And that seems to be top of mind for a lot of clients, especially I think in the UK at the moment with some of the changes that are happening with some of the budgetary stuff that has been implemented. So I guess let's start off with your thoughts around consultancies, boutiques especially, and what kind of positive impact can they bring? And I guess as well, maybe probably worth touching on some of the challenges as well around boutique consultancies.
It's a very cool topic, and I was quite excited when I saw it sort of pop up. It's a funny thing. Like I worked for arguably one of the biggest consultancy in the world. I mean, we had 740,000 people globally, and then they owned many other companies. So if you add up all the subsidiaries, all the joint ventures, you're looking at almost a sort of million people. Big consultancies are incredible because they can lower the total cost over time, and that spread that out over a long period. There's the repeatability and all of those sort of things. I think I spent a lot of time as a customer too, and as an economic buyer at a customer, and one of the things that you sort of start to pick up as an economic buyer is you want to bring in a group that are not going to keep changing. There's continuity, but they do one, maybe two things really well. And I think that's where the boutique consulting model is starting to become a really interesting concept. If I've got a supply chain problem, and there is a group of 50 people in a consulting group that are incredible at supply chain related topics. And they can go level 6 deep in terms of the sort of business capabilities, but they also have a reasonable amount of, depth in the underlying tech. They become very, very interesting. They also tend to know that market, So boutiques tend to be very kind of regional centric, very domain centric. And that means that, they're sort of helping unlock one or two areas of a particular large enterprise. I think that's very impactful. And I think there's a complementarity to the bigger players. I don't think it's an or. I think it's normally more of an and. Lastly, I also like to put that one of the things I'm sort of picking up on the market is the amount of experimentation in professional services. So I'll give you an example. We have a startup program, lots of companies, software companies building on Databricks. They want to be the next Adobe. Adobe runs fully on Databricks. And I ran this event and there were about 100 people in the audience, and about half of them were regional boutique consulting or system integrators. So you can kind of see there's a hybridization going on. There's a kind of people are starting to take really seriously this notion of services as software. So I think the next 5 years is going to be really fascinating, and I think being in a boutique, very, very interesting.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you. I think we've certainly seen as well that the opportunity to blend with some of the bigger players, bring our specialism in the things actually that we really want to do and really want to be known for, and then gel that with other people, either other boutiques that have that specialism or the broader play, and we really enjoy that. I think also I mean, it's such an interesting area to be in at the moment. The technology does move so fast. And actually, for us, like where we're quite inquisitive by nature in that sort of startup feel, being able to point at some of the newer things and be like, right, is that something that we can pick up? What's the interesting part there? Yeah, really, really love it. And I guess it kind of leads on a little bit to the next question, actually, about having the conversations at the right level. And I think, perhaps my experience having been, on the sort of vendor side is that, you're always really keen to talk about use cases. Use cases are the things that you'll go and, you'll have the stats around, right? Well, if we can do better promotion management, this is what it's going to mean. And that's the impact. But actually bringing that up to the right level. And quite often you go all the way to the very top, which is, this is how we can support retail, and it's finding that blend. So I don't know if you want to give a little bit more insight on.
Yeah, it's kind of a balance of macro versus micro. So the use case kind of movement of let's do something high impact. I think it's indicative very much of the kind of data and AI movement. So rewind about 10 years ago, we used to sell big analytics platforms, and it was like this 2 year to get anything out of it. With cloud, we started to see sort of more of a kind of granularity start to form, kind of typical of unbundling. So you unbundle, like no different to kind of albums, unbundle Spotify playlist. So sort of think of it like that. Like, so we've gone through a massive amount of unbundling, but as we've unbundled, we've started to harden up the infrastructure layer, harden up the platform layer, and what I'm starting to see sort of play out is how do we fit many use cases into a packaging, potentially even a repackaging. And it plays into what's going to be your next question around the organization piece, because it's quite fascinating because, we have a very typical design for, like, take a retailer, they will have a structure. But actually what's happening with data is there's a kind of mixing of the structure, which makes it really difficult to figure out what are the bounded contexts of different business functions. Which ones are more supportive, which ones are more kind of in the direct value stream. So when I go into sort of executive conversations, the macro view and the velocity of how do we get faster road to revenue, how do we do cost out, and then how that links into the more granular view and what is the bundling. I think that is one of the most fascinating things that sort of happened over the last few years. I do still think we are very fixed to the old model, and we're too constrained by the old model. And what's beautiful about data and AI, it allows us to reorganize. How we do that with humans, different problem entirely.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we often see. One of the reasons why, again, it's brilliant to work with data is you can go to any part of an organization and you can find some ways in which data can help and it can influence. And then leading on to the part about how do you set yourself up for success in that, quite often this is where the pivot will come of, do we centralize or do we distribute our data teams, and how do we, who Rob will often talk about, the person who pays for the benefit or gets, it might be different to the person who actually gets the ROI for the benefit from that solution. So really key topic at the moment, I think, is quite a lot of people look to how they can improve the operations of data, knowing that there's a hell of a lot of value in it.
And the definition of data starts to become a little bit broader than we typically used to have it. So, 10 years ago in an organization, if you said the word data, people immediately think about tables and structures and all that. The files are all over there in a file server, and the images were all over there in some kind of image bank. That blending means that the sort of total data is sort of more consolidated, more standardized. It's in a common format. It's more accessible. Nobody's really good at figuring out what's the mixing and matching of that. And then how do models play a part, and how do features play a part, and these different data assets become really tricky to sort of govern and manage. And I think that's fundamentally where we as a company have been kind of focused. If we flip that then to the business side, what is the reorganization and how do we get faster flow that is more customer centric, more supplier centric, and effectively creates an ecosystem? Because lots of people talk about platforms in their businesses. Very few companies actually build real platforms that create a two-sided network effect in their business. So the platforms are just a rebranding of a solution, not actually a true platform. And I think there's an appreciation that companies will start to have that actually there's something a little bit more interesting that they could be doing if they let go of some of the past. And unfortunately, a lot of it is due to having legacy.
Yeah.
That's probably the big thing. It's like decluttering your garage. I think we're at a point in time where people can do a lot of decluttering, a lot of reorganizing, but that's tricky because nobody really knows what that target state's going to look like.
Yeah, and I guess there's definitely this mix of people process over the top of the platform piece. I guess, should we maybe just talk a little bit about how we've seen some of these things play out within organizations, how they get, because they're hard decisions to come to, right? They don't necessarily start, well, sometimes they do. Share your opinion on how organizations can.
So it's quite cool coming from a company that is, as of I think in 4 days' time will be 12. In reality, from a kind of maturity perspective, we're probably more like 8. But we were 1,000 people 3 years ago. We're 8,000 now. We were probably 500 people 5 years ago. So there's an important lesson there, because as a company, we grow really fast. And actually, if you look at most startups and scale-ups, they start with few humans, they grow their business, and then they add humans. Okay, let's go to the enterprise. The enterprise starts with lots of humans, they reorganize lots of humans, and then they try to build. Mm-hmm. Do you see the problem? Like, immediately they're starting with an inherent legacy mindset, business as usual, like running, and this problem of trying to build the engine, rebuild the engine, fly the plane, and they're doing it as a collective, not doing it as a kind of small emergent team.
Yeah.
And it's not a new notion of kind of setting up a satellite team. So that kind of build a team and then start to add people later, we find that actually to be way more effective because it fits more with the dynamics of like how hyperscalers grow over time. And I think the people and process organization thing, we don't appreciate that kind of dynamics of having too many humans in the process in the beginning, and how that grows over time. So I think more and more, my opinion is, when you're building a platform, start with very few people. Start with a very small group that are in charge of the decision making, like a founding group, and then build from there. And as you emulate how platform businesses have come up, you probably are more likely to succeed in becoming a platform business. Otherwise, what I've watched over the last 10 years is just a lot of build, rebuild, build, rebuild, build, rebuild.
Yeah.
So that's not ideal.
No, I certainly think there's when you see that latter pattern, it can end up with some chaotic bits, right, that aren't necessarily joined to the core. You don't get the benefits across the whole enterprise. And yeah, it's, again, data is that interesting thing, right, where you will find those pockets of people on the ground that are doing some amazing things with it, and there is an element of corralling, right? There's an element of exciting people, enabling people, and then corralling people back. Rob will often talk about, the Formula One car goes around the track fast because it has brakes and aerodynamics. It has the controls in place to allow it to do that.
Yeah, he does like his car analogies, doesn't he?
Yeah. So I guess, like we touched on it a little bit, the rate of change in our industry, and the rate of change especially driven by Databricks, is phenomenal. So as CTO, it's your role, right, to be right at the very front of that. So how do you do it? How, like, tips and advice for how others as well can stay at the forefront, and also share some of the things that you think these will be some of the really impactful things that I'm excited about.
Well, it's a really good question. It does feel like half the time there's a fire hose. And just to be clear, I'm a dad of 2 kids under 6. So it's not like I can spend significant. I will be listening to something and climbed on at the same time. So typically, being a kind of learner jungle gym type of climbing frame is kind of weird. So appreciate that that's part of how this dynamic works. I think the fact that I love what I do is helpful. Like, I'm really passionate about how the technology can be game changing. I think I have a natural appreciation for it and it's one of the reasons why I started my intro with as a biochemist. When I used to do things in biochemistry, right, any simulation could take anywhere between 45 and 185 days. Okay. Today, with the technology that we have at our disposal, you're talking about 4 hours to like 2 days to do the same thing. So that's a time compression. And that's why I'm super passionate about it, because I can see where the applications can lead. So the passion being there, it kind of gives you that drive, it gives you that motivation. I do spend time to kind of pause and reflect, but then keeping up, like, we have so much noise that hits us every day, and there's new stuff that just comes at us all the time. We are building new capabilities constantly. We have 1,500 people building our product and engineering kind of capability. So that's a lot of synthesizing through, what do I need to know? How do I need to know it? We have lots of people sort of really summarizing. I use AI a lot to help me do this. Right? I summarize lots of things. If I get a long document, I will pump it in and summarize it as quickly as possible. So I eat dog food on the stuff that we do regularly. I use our technology like every day. I'm constantly looking at, like, what's the telemetry of this customer? How is this customer profiling in terms of the infrastructure they're using? Like, that helps me when I walk into a meeting with an executive. I also, like, it's really cool to, like, meet an EVP of a major multinational and go, your platform's purring like a kitten. Like, this is really cool. Because it builds credibility. The thing about staying abreast of what's going on in the market, what's going on with geopolitics, this is where I listen to lots of podcasts. I summarize lots of podcasts. I watch lots of content. I don't read as much. I probably listen more, and I think that's been the way I sort of take it in. But if you speak to any Databricks employee, we call ourselves Bricksters. Every single one of us are, like, overwhelmed by the sheer veracity of how things hit us. It's like you're constantly in a fire hose, and it's weird how adaptable humans are. We all adapt to it, every single one of us. And there are those that really struggle, but most of us really adapt to it. And I think it's just kind of different resonance that happens. That said, we do have to take time out. You do have to pause. So I think it's balance, and I think it's also kind of being super passionate about what you're doing. But I can imagine how it must feel to be on the outside. Like, what on earth? How are they keeping this up?
Yeah, it is unbelievable, the rate of change. And I think some of the movements we've seen in AI, actually, one of the things there you mentioned about adaptability, it's now, for me personally, it's much nicer to be able to get content in the way that I want to get the content. Now, you can see how AI is starting to change that, right? Make everything a little bit more accessible. So still a fire hose, but you can maybe pick the part that you're trying to sip from. Yeah. So
well, I think as we get to effectively having our own assistant that gets to know our preferences, and actually there's far more kind of personalized, hyper personalized. We've said that word for so many years in the tech industry, but let's be honest, it was about as personal as a kind of population segment. I think this is really getting there.
Yeah.
And that ability to tell me what I need to know, I'd love to use it for like the sort of perpetual fire hose of emails coming from my kids' schools to go, what do I actually need to know next week? And what do I need to know for this day? I think those types of things can help humanity denoise a lot of what's going on. The notion of noise is from Kahneman, which is also the notion of the thinking fast, thinking slow. I think there's a natural appreciation people need to start having for how to denoise.
Yeah, the downtime's really important. Well, look, I think that's been really great to have you on the show. Loads that we covered there. Thank you so much for coming in, and obviously, hopefully, we catch up again soon.
Well, I can't see we won't. We're doing some really cool things together, and I'm impressed to see where you're going in that kind of boutique space, and I'm very, very fascinated to see what you're going to do next. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks, Dael.